Hello everyone! Welcome to this tutorial on Python basics. And in this tutorial specifically, we are going to study about logical and looping constructs. What it is exactly about is repeating or looping the decision multiple times and stopping them. So let's check that out. We are actually going to learn how a loop works in Python, what range function is and what it actually does, executing a particular code block again and again, and understanding how to break through the looping construct. So before I go ahead, let me explain it a little. What looping construct exactly does is it takes a particular code block and it repeats it again and again over multiple attrition. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the Python interpreter and run a code. It might not be making very much sense to you, so let's try to break it down in individual units. The looping construct in Python is implementing using the for keyword. So what I've done over here is I've taken the for keyword and I have taken a counter and I have taken the range method. What it actually does is it creates a range of 10 numbers. So once the 10 number range is created, then for each number this print loop is created. And therefore, since we have 10 over here, if we count it 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so it should be counted around 10. Now let's try to check out what the range function is and what it actually does. As you can see, the range function takes an input and creates a list of numbers for us. What is a list? As we have discussed in our previous unit as well. So I don't think anybody should be having a problem with lists. So over here, range took that 10 as a parameter, and from 0 to 9, it created a range, a list of numbers, or a sequence of numbers. We can take two operands as an upper and a lower limit, and it again creates the sequence for us. So as we can see, the first value is included in the sequence, and the second value, which is the larger limit, is excluded from the sequence. That has to be kept in mind always. Now, in our previous example, if we print this particular integer rather than the string, let's see what happens. So as we can see, what for keyword does is it runs in a loop based on this integer value. Let's try to increase the value. So it prints still 99. There could be a case. Now for this loop, we have printed around 1000 values, but as you can see, it creates over a particular range only. What if we want to break out at a specific point? Right. For example, let's see if you are going through the entire 1000 series, but we want to break out at 901. So what are we going to do? And why do we need to break? Let's understand this. In many cases, what can happen is we may have a loop running and it could run into endless situations. And what can happen is we might want to break the loop before it runs into a particular condition. Let's see this. So what we are trying to do over here is, in this example, is we are printing 200 numbers, it rating over them. And then if any of the number is 14, then we break the loop, otherwise we don't break the loop. Let's try to run it. As we can see, the counter started with 0 and ran till 13. But when the 14 was encountered, the loop actually broke and the loop couldn't go further. Let's try to modify this code a little bit, okay? Let's keep it as 56. And then run the code. Now, it again ran till 55 and stopped at 56. So this was a way to break through the loop. I think it's fairly easy to understand. Let's encounter yet another type of loop called while loop, which is fairly important as well. So let's take an example of this test condition. This series is yet another kind of loop called while loop. What it does is it actually doesn't take any range-like for loop. Rather than it takes a condition, and until and unless that condition is true, we actually run that loop endlessly. So you have to be very careful, because if we cannot operate or evaluate the condition properly, then this loop will keep running endlessly. So let's see, what we're trying to do here is, if I equals 1, then we compare the I and check if it is less than 45 or not. And we print I over here. Now we are also incrementing I. That is, we are adding I with 1 each time the loop is running. Since the loop is running and each time we are adding this value to I, at some point it becomes equal to 45. And then this condition I is less than 45 becomes false and the loop stops. So if we forgot to add 1 to this I every time the loop runs, this loop will run endlessly. Let's try to execute it. So it ran till 44, and after 44 it stopped. And why did it stop? Because of base condition. Let's try to modify it a little and do a little horrible task and try to run it endlessly. Let's just omit this condition and see what happens. So as you can see, it will keep printing 1 again and again and again. And the program will never stop until and unless we give a keyboard interrupt. And interrupt the entire process which was running through Python. So this is a very simple case of while loop, and you have to be very careful with the base case, otherwise the entire code is going to run endlessly. So that was all about loop, and we are just trying to keep the things simple, and therefore we didn't introduce many complex cases. In later tutorials, we are going to encounter many complex cases based on these constructs. In our next tutorial, we are going to meet with a very exciting concept of handling the errors and what are exceptions. So for this tutorial, what you might want to try is to go online, as I always suggest, and find as many examples as it can be possible for loop and while loop in Python. The people who are coming from other programming backgrounds might be wondering that the for and while loop works a little awkwardly or differently than other languages. So just keep learning, and we will see the benefits in our next chapters. Thank you.